Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 103 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I'm your host, Neilan, and as always, my co-hosts Mark and Kellen are here with me in the studio. How are you guys doing?
We're almost there.
It's been so long since I've seen you.
Yeah, it's
How's
been,
your week?
Been a while.
How's South Africa?
Great. South Africa's great from over here. We are right in the middle. We're past the halfway mark of our top 50 board games of all time. This is going to be numbers 20 to 11 of our list. So we're getting there. We're getting all the way to the top, and
here we go.
Pay
Here
attention.
Yep.
You may learn a thing or two.
Yeah, this is going to be
1/3 of the list.
if nothing, educational. Let us get right into it. I will start us off with the 20th best game of all time. This is a Reiner Knizia game that has already been mentioned by Mark. It is Blue Lagoon.
Blue Lagoon.
This moved up my list this year.
Double
crossover.
The double crossover.
Blue Lagoon's amazing. It is a game that if you are past the entry level and you're looking for a game that's a little bit more puzzly, a little bit more abstract, but it's just a satisfying game that is still quite easy to teach. Some of the scoring can get a little bit convoluted, but it is fantastic. It is a game that is divided into two halves. The first half, you are creating routes and then planting your little flags somewhere on the islands in order to create huts, which then go into the second round where the board resets for everything except your huts, and then you start your routes from those huts in order to collect resources and score. I have not played Through the Desert, which I believe this is largely similar to in some ways.
We tried that one time, remember, and then just didn't do it.
Oh yeah, what, Through the Desert?
Yeah, we almost played it.
Yeah,
almost played it.
I want to, because I'm extremely curious to see, because there's a chance I like Through the Desert more than Blue Lagoon. Like, who can say? But I don't think you can go wrong with Blue Lagoon. It's a beautiful looking game, bright, vibrant colors. I would recommend it to most people that are looking for something maybe quite different to what they've played. I think Mark sort of nailed it by saying it has a Go-like feel to it. There's blocking. There is just long-term planning that's going to pay off in a spatial puzzle sort of way.
Some may say you can never improve upon a classic like Go with such a historic origin, but if anyone can improve upon a classic game with such a historic origin, then it's the only true and living doctor, the Dr. Reiner Knizia.
That's right.
Absolutely.
We applaud him, and we applaud everything that he's done in his career. We bow to the only true and living doctor.
We need to let him loose on chess.
By no other doctor shall we be known or be known.
That is number 20, Blue Lagoon.
My number 20th best game of all time is the fourth of four Oink Games. Oink Games is a small board game publisher out of Japan that makes games in small boxes. I have built an Oink shrine in my apartment for my love of the Oink games. This is my favorite. This is Startups. Startups is a very small card hand management game where the more that you invest into a company, the more you must pay out for that company if you do not have the majority shares in it. So there is a series of companies with 2 shares, or I think it's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 9 shares. And so the more shares you reveal publicly, the more that you're a target for someone to try to get one more than you, and then you have to pay out big. What's fun is at the end of the game, the 3 cards in your hand are not discarded, but they're added to your shares. So you might be holding on to a nice tight hand of 3 cards of all of the same type of company, so you can just boom get people right at the end of the game. This is a fascinating little card game. I think it punches well above its weight. It's also adorable. It has really, really cute art. I really like Startups.
Yeah, big fan of it. I love this game.
I think I'm comfortable saying that this might be my favorite Oink game, in fact. Startups I like a whole lot. It was close to being on my list as well.
Yeah, same here. My number 20 game is a double crossover with Mr. Kellen Allen. Imperial 2030.
Oh,
yeah, great.
You're speaking my language.
That's right. I know I am. This is a game that it's dropped 5 spots, but only because we haven't played it more. I'd look to get it back to the table. He's already spoken about it. The idea of managing the resources of nations, but you have no tie to the nation. You can go from one nation to the other, exploiting or expanding or helping its infrastructure, but always with the eye on enriching your own coffers, because in the end, it doesn't matter what countries you commanded, it only matters how much money you have in the bank.
It's like Why are all these try-hard train gamers playing 18xx derivatives when we could make them about war?
Right, that's right.
Like, why build a train station when you could just exploit countries for their money? Then there are actually people who won't play this game based off of the theme.
I get that. It is a quite Saturnine theme. It is the idea that you're exploiting these nations with no regard for the people living in it or the wars you may be causing or expanding. All you're trying to do is to enrich your bottom line.
You know that it's a tough theme because we've only cut out 4 jokes that we said about it to make air.
It's just unlike a lot of other games. If you like Matt Gertz, if you like it's got a rondelle. If you like the Matt Gertz sort of design, it's there for you as well. Just a unique game. Imperial 2030, my number 20 game of all time, down 5 spots from last year.
My number 19th best game of all time. It is a one and true Living Doctor double feature with my favorite Reiner Knizia game, Taj Mahal, which is a double crossover.
I'm staying out of this crossover.
Taj Mahal is a game of bids that you see mapped out on the board at the start of the game, and they are increasing importance depending on what you're angling for. There's a route building structure. You have a hand of cards with various currencies depicted on them. They might be elephants or green advisors. I forget what the game calls them exactly. But on a given bid, you might be trying to say, I'm going to try and get all the trade goods. I want to sort of bid elephants. And you keep going around the table, and if someone outbids you on elephants, you're just out of luck. You've spent all your elephant cards. There's nothing you can do about it. So you have to keep pushing as far as you think you can go in order to win the bid or risk losing everything. At any point, if you pull out of the bid, anything you are leading on, you will win that corresponding suit's power, whether it's placing a palace on the board, getting the trade goods, or getting another palace somewhere that would complete a route. You're trying to build routes. You're trying to collect goods. They'll have a set triangle scoring bonus. So there are multiple ways to score. But I just love how you can see the entire future of the game mapped out at the start, and you have to find and bide your time to use your cards in order to pick the moments where you sort of strike with what you've gained in order to win a bid. It is a fantastic game, and my favorite Reiner Knizia game, that is Taj Mahal.
What a unique experience in a box. Just something that is unlike any other game that I've played. So one to definitely check out. My 19th favorite board game of all time is a crossover with the one and only Green Tank. This is Genoa. Traders of Genoa. Genoa is a game that I've been playing for more than 5 years, that I've had for a long time and enjoyed playing it in my New York City days. In Traders of Genoa, you are playing a standard contract fulfillment, set collection, Euro type game, except every player's turn you can take one of their actions from them if you pay them for it. So it's a bid to do any of the actions on your turn. So when it's your turn, you actually only get one of the actions that you have available to you per player count. So if there are 4 players playing, there are 4 actions available, but you can only take one of them. And so that leads to this system where people are saying, I need you to go that way. And people are saying, no, you should go this way. And you're saying, well, if you pay me, I'll go that way. And they're like, well, does that mean that you'll give me the action there? And you're like, well, no, then you pay me more.
Right.
Everything in the game is tight and interesting. It never feels like it's not your turn. And that is just an incredible thing to have in such a long Euro game. It is probably too long if I had to have a criticism for it.
Maybe, yeah.
But I love it. So if you think that Sidereal Confluence is the best trading Euro game, you would be wrong. You would be wrong. The name of the game is called Genoa. Check it out.
Speaking of games that might be called a bit too long, my number 19 game has dropped 3 spots from last year. I can't help but love the epicness of it. This is Dominant Species. I guess this is also a good time to mention Chad Jensen, the designer who passed away earlier this year. I just love Dominant Species. Its goal is to tell the tale of different species of animals fighting for control of their world, and I just can't help but get wrapped up into it. When I'm controlling the amphibians, I'm trying to survive and have them flourish, and I just love the theme and the sweep of it. It does run quite long, but I love the way action selections are handled in this game. There is a sort of a sideboard that's connected to the main board where actions are available, and you take turns placing your pawns there, and then the actions fire off from top to bottom. And sometimes you have yourself set up for something that requires something earlier in the action selections going your way, and when it doesn't, you're forced to sort of change gears on the fly. It's just a very epic game. It's one that I would suggest playing when you're sure you're okay with things going a little long and you're okay just reveling in sort of like, again, the epic nature of it. Big fan of this game. My number 19 game of all time, Dominant Species.
I am in awe of the action selection board in Dominant Species because it's a lot you have to internalize. There are so many actions. The timing of them is so important. Finding the right time to pick the ones you need to do is crucial. I love that side of it. I find the game was too long in my first play of it, which is something you said already. And I found the dominance calculation as something you have to be doing constantly quite frustrating.
I can see that.
I wish it was better visually represented in some way. I think I need to give Dominant Species one more try before I...
What an amazing theme for a board game, honestly.
Yeah,
it's just like you kind of start telling a little story to yourself about the animals that are in your care and protection and how you try to freeze the other people out, make them go extinct.
Yeah, literally freeze them out. You can bring the Ice Age to them.
That's why I said freeze them out. Did you listen to what I said?
I did listen to what you said. I should also mention that the different species types have asynchronous powers, which I think, again, is just a nice touch to the game. So, yeah, 19, Dominant Species.
My number 18 best game of all time is Alchemists. This is a deduction/worker placement game by CGE. I love the deduction puzzle in this. It is a game that sort of has invented its own almost like little system of like calculus of maths where you have to sort of internalize the rules in order just to be able to make deductions on it. But it's I wouldn't want to say intuitive because it takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around, but it's very cleverly realized and quite mathematically precise in a way that it really, really impressed me. Ostensibly, the game is about being alchemists where you are trying to deduce the properties of sort of different alchemical reagents in order to publish your findings on them. So it also includes this weird slice of academia in its theming where you sort of have to like come to a conclusion, be the first one to publish it in order to get rewarded for it. And someone might dispute your findings later because you might maybe have bluffed your way to that finding and you might just sort of take a bet on or a guess on what you think one of the properties might be before you're ready in the race to be the first one to publish. And then if someone calls you out on it, you get punished for it, which is a thing that really happens in academia. The theme is scientific research. It's about the scientific method in academia, and that's such an interesting thing, but it's wrapped in a more sort of cutesy, fun CGE style, which is just a little bit more absurd, a little bit over the top. You're testing reagents by drinking the potions by yourself. Sometimes they might have weird effects. I think the way that the work placement system works is quite interesting because the first thing you do is you bid for turn order and then you just place all your pieces. And if you don't want to spend a lot in order to bid early, you just have to hope that the people that go before you don't beat you to the spots that you desperately need. You're making potions to sell them. There's a lot going on in Alchemists. I really, really enjoy it. That is Alchemists by CGE.
I'm on the record as anti-science. So I don't love Alchemists. I don't know why you're laughing. My number 18 favorite board game of all time has dropped from spot number 11 to spot number 18 after a particularly bad game of it that we had this past to celebrate my birthday. This is I'm the Boss.
Blame this one on Kurt.
Blame this one on Kurt. I'm the Boss is a Sid Sackson classic. Sid Sackson is a classic board game designer who has been invented the hallmarks of modern gaming, frankly. And in I'm the Boss, it is a pure negotiation game. Each round, different groups of players are necessary to have a negotiation in order to acquire money. But you need Neilan and Kellen, and then one of Mark, Christina, or Kurt for that negotiation. And so everyone will vie for how much they're willing to accept to become a part of that mission. That is all confounded by a hand of cards that you have that allow you to participate even if it's not your identity. There are cards that allow you to take control of the entire deal and say, I'm the boss, and take over the entire negotiation. So you could be literally 20 minutes into a negotiation and then someone plays the I'm the boss card, effectively resetting all of the work and inroads that you have made. This is wacky and chaotic and pure in so much as pure means a distilled negotiation fest. This is old and rough around the edges, make no mistake about it, but if you're looking for a riotous amount of laughter and silliness and craziness and a hand of cards that's allowing you to just get your neighbors in many ways that feel similar to a game like Cosmic Encounter. I think what I am saying evokes some of that same feeling. You will love I'm the Boss.
My number 18 game has dropped a spot as a result of me not getting a chance to play it as much as I want. It is a longer game, so that's a hindrance, but it's a game whose title shares an important year in Kellen's life, I think. 1846. My game is 1846.
The year of my birth?
No, not your birth. How old are you? No, but think back. 1846, your family's history. Just think about that for a while. 1846 is a train game that is among the most Euro-ish of the train games. This is a game that if I was going to play a train game with these guys, if I didn't get a chance to get my hands on 1889, which is a tough one to find and one I haven't played myself, but I've heard is a great introductory game, 1846 might be one of the ones I chose because it does have a sort of a Euro feel to it. If you're not familiar with train games, they basically have two main phases, an operating phase and a stock phase, where you are buying and selling stock in train companies, and then you are laying track and running the train companies that you own, and also hoping that the train companies you invested in, even if you don't own them, do well as well. 1846 takes some of the edges off, preventing catastrophic swings that you can find in other games, but it's definitely much more of a train game than a game like City of the Big Shoulders, which I also love. It was lower down on my list, but if you want a more pure train game, this one would be one of the 2 or 3 that I would suggest for a first-time train game player. 1846 is my number 18 game, down a spot from last year. Kellen, now tell us 1846.
Have you figured it out yet?
No. Yeah. All right, I'll talk to you about it later.
Great.
I thought you were aware of this, but I'll have to let you know.
About my
in private.
Familia.
That's right.
My number 17th best game of all time is the Exit the Game series. So this is a series of, I think there's like 10-ish at least, little small boxes. They go for about $10 to $15 each, so they're super cheap. They're like loosely themed, trying to replicate the feel of sort of an escape room type of game. So it's a genre of board game that's become pretty popular recently as the rise in escape rooms has been as meteoric as it is. Exit the Game is unfortunately a one and done affair, but again, there are so many of them and they're so relatively cheap, and I think what you get out of the box stands head and shoulders above other games that offer similar experiences. One of the reasons that they're only single use and unfortunately can't even be handed off is that a lot of the puzzles rely on manipulation of the components in a way that is probably just going to ruin them beyond recognition. There's a lot of cutting, there's a lot of tearing, a lot of folding involved, and I think that's just something that is seen as so much of a taboo in the hobby that there's something satisfying about doing it. You have this deck of cards that starts off pristine, and by the time you're done with Exit the Game, it's just a mess of fragments all over your table. And that's just super fun. Each of these boxes also has a central main puzzle, which each box sort of builds towards. You're getting pieces towards it. It normally involves some sort of construction, some sort of outside the box thinking that always feels very satisfying once you crack it. You just sort of sit there and you're staring at it for ages and ages, and then it comes to you and you're like, oh my God, what if it's this? And it will be something that someone won't even have thought was possible within the confines of the game. And that's not an exaggeration. That's how most of these actually play out. It's pleasantly surprising every single time. I've not been let down by one of these yet. I think a good early start, if you were looking for one, would be from the earlier series. Abandoned Cabin is the one I would recommend to most people. That is the Exit the Game series. I would say probably a good, fun recommendation for the holidays, especially because you could do this with a group of 2 or 3 family members and have a good time. That is Exit the Game.
One of my favorite board games of all time, guys, is actually 10 board games in one.
Cheater. That's a cheat. It's one game per slot.
So my top 10 is all of the Exit games.
Those are fun. You do need a smaller player count. You might think that you could play them with like 4 or more, but I don't think you should.
I think 3 is the absolute limit, and maybe even 2 is ideal, actually.
Yeah.
But that might depend on you and your group, actually.
How dumb you are.
Well, sure.
My number 17, best favorite board game of all time, is actually the highest new addition to my list. This is a game that I did not expect to like as much as I do. It's something we've talked about a few times on the podcast. This is Zendo. Zendo is Looney Labs' pyramid game. And in Zendo, one player has a rule that they are trying to help articulate to the rest of the players at the table. That rule might be no red pieces on top of yellow pieces. And so what they have to do is they have to make in front of them 2 different structures, and those structures have to follow the rule and not follow the rule. And then they put out a stone to indicate whether it follows or doesn't follow the rule. Then on everyone's turn, they take turns making structures and then getting to learn more and more about and theorize, do science, some may say, to figure out what the rule might be. And then there's other subsystems in the game where ultimately you're trying to guess to figure out if you know what the rule is. But if you guess and you're wrong, what you've done is you've given out a lot of precious information about a way that you're thinking. And some of my favorite times playing this game are when someone guesses and they're wrong, but it's something you had not even considered, and you look at the board and it just completely changes your understanding of what's going on. Something unlocks in your mind. And this game is just literally beautiful pieces of translucent pieces and structures everywhere all across the board. It sort of looks like chaos, and the rules get more and more complicated. The game can escalate with you as your group grows into Zendo. This is, once again, probably more of an activity than a strict board game, but I could never see myself getting rid of Zendo. And for the 20 minutes or 30 minutes it takes to play, what an interesting experience.
Yeah, I really struggled with this because I wanted to put it on my list. It was very close to being on it, but I was wrestling with the same problems that you articulated, which is that it's almost a game. It's something I would never turn down at any point, but I couldn't find the right place for it on my list. It is perhaps an omission, truth be told, but that is... Sorry, I was about to close your game.
No, it's okay. I've done that to everyone like 20 times, I think. I just keep talking. I carry you on my back, with the team on my back, though. Zendo.
My number 17 game of all time has dropped 10 spots again to sort of carry...
Garbage. It was good last year in 2019. Garbage.
No, it's because I can't get you guys to play it. This is Cuba Libre. This is a coin game that I want these guys to play, but they resist.
Not Cuba. Like literally Cuba?
You have to, if you're talking about one of their games, you have to speak as they speak. Cuba. Don't you know?
The people...
The people of Cuba call it Cuba.
Do they?
Yes. You're questioning
Neilan?
me about...
Don't look at me. I didn't know that.
That's how they say it. Believe me, I'm
Have you been?
tight with Fidel. What? Is Fidel dead? Fidel Castro? I think he might be dead. We're on a tangent. Fidel Castro does feature in this game in case you're looking for more Fidel in your life.
Coin game. Counterinsurgency.
That's right.
Root, but not cute.
Root, but not cute. Oh, God. Yes. Root, but not cute. And I would say better than Root. So this is a coin game. If you've played Root, you have the gist of what a game like this is. You play one of 4 factions, in the case of Cuba Libre, that all play very, very, very differently, all have very, very, very different goals. You can play as the government, who starts out with a ton of resources and is just basically trying to hold on, trying to quell various rebellions going on throughout the nation. You can play as the mob. They're not looking out for the welfare of the nation, but you're just trying to exploit the nation as much as possible before it goes communist. There are a couple of counterinsurgents. One is a guerrilla faction. One is a student-led faction who's trying to lead uprisings throughout Cuba using guerrilla acts. And the game just plays really, really different. Again, I'm going to caveat this by saying I'm a huge fan of historical games. This game drips history. If you're interested in playing a game that lets you recreate or learn about moments in this case, the Cuban Revolution, it's for you. It's also very, very asymmetrical, as I've mentioned. So there's a lot of just interesting things going on with Cuba Libre. I really enjoy it and looking forward to getting a chance to play it. It's been too long. My number 17, Cuba Libre.
My number 16 best game of all time is Watson and Holmes. This is a murder mystery solving game in the vein of something like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. There is a bespoke story that you break out one of these 10 cases, 10 or more, I forget, every time you play it. And no one at the table must have known that case before, because the game is about trying to figure out who did the murder, who done it. You're moving around locations in London, you're sort of interviewing the police, you're trying to find evidence, and you do that by sort of bidding on locations on the board. I might really want to go to the police station, so I will spend 2 carriage tokens to go there. But Kellen thinks that I want to go there because of something I know earlier, so he bids 3 carriage tokens to go there, bumping me off. So it's a game about sort of trying to a little bit bluff your way into sort of hinting at what locations are important in order to get cards that are going to reveal more of the puzzle to you. And if you've solved who the murderer is, who the murder weapon is, and why they did it, you go to Sherlock Holmes and you sort of say, this is who did it, this is why, and this is what they did it with. And if you're correct, you've won. I want to play Watson and Holmes more than I get a chance to play it, unfortunately. But yeah, it is a game that I keep itching to play. It's a game I would be happy to play anytime.
Comes with a number of mysteries.
Yeah, so it only has I want to say it's 10 or 12. And
Okay,
I've done
so still a
about
good
5
amount.
of them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've still got some life left in that Watson and Holmes box.
And also, I forget, this is a game that you would want to play with more players, right?
I think the sweet spot for this is maybe around 4 or 5,
okay,
thereabouts, because I think the increased player count leads to sort of more blocking, more bumping,
right,
which is really fun. If you're just picking a spot, paying a carriage, and going to it, that's half of the game, and that is a little bit unsatisfying.
Yeah.
But trying to find 5 people that want to play Watson and Holmes has proven difficult for me, because Kellen hates it.
No, I don't. I like it. I love.
Where is it on your list?
Well, didn't know.
Put your list where your mouth is.
As they say.
It's so great in the same vein as some of the other games we talked about, like tricking people, or you can pretend like a location is literally more important than it actually is, and just this group sense of like there's something that everyone knows that you don't, which is that you need to visit the graveyard,
right?
And it's sort of like, do I though?
Right.
Do I? Can I get away with skipping this? Like, they may all be just dumb, and like I'm going to be the one that's going to get this without it. And that paranoia is a feeling that I really, really appreciate in board games.
Yeah, it's led to some of the best post-game discussions, because not everyone will have seen all of the same information, and it's quite clever about allowing you to get to the same answers by different routes. So trying to figure out how people put the puzzle together slightly different ways is fantastic. That is Watson and Holmes at number 16.
My number 16 favorite board game of all time continues my tradition of putting activities instead of games on the list. This is a game for you if you like being funny. This is a game for you if you like laughter. If you don't like this game, I would contest that you are a tryhard. And I say that because I have never met someone who doesn't like this game. But I'm sure you're out there, Mr. Tryhard. That is Telestrations. Telestrations is the quintessential drawing game. It's based on the parlor game, which I believe is called Eat Poop You Cat.
Yep.
No idea. In this game, you get a word or a phrase, and you can either use the words or phrases in the box, or you can make up your own. It's passed around the table where it's alternately drawn and then written, drawn and then written. This game is substantially more fun when you just kind of try to derail or be as literal as possible with what you're seeing when you write your description of the word that you get. And then you do the best part of the game, which is story time. Story time is when you sort of flip through and talk about what has happened to your drawing. Usually there's one person in the group of 7 or 6 or 7 that's horrid at drawing, and everything gets screwed up with that person. I have never laughed more playing board games than with Telestrations.
Telestrations is great. It's a great game to bring to like Christmas or Thanksgiving. It's like just the best game for that type of environment.
I have a confession. Last year, I said I forgot to put Telestrations on my list. I forgot to put it on my list. It should probably be on my list again, and I've forgotten. Telestrations is fantastic, and you can break out in any number of environments, and is always funny. Unfairly not represented on my list. Telestrations.
Man of the people.
Fairly unrepresented on my list. My number 16 game of all time has risen 14 spots. It's a game that I got a chance to play not too long ago, and it sort of coincides with a game I mentioned earlier. This is not PAX Premier, but PAX Renaissance. PAX Renaissance plays quite a bit like PAX Premier. It's a game of like political intrigue. It's a game where you have to think both strategically and tactically. It's a game, again, one of the biggest things, and I talked about this a couple episodes ago when I was talking about PAX Premier, just so rich with history. And it's a game that I would enjoy even without playing it, just going through the cards and reading about all these famous figures. I just love that part of it. There's just so much going on. There's, again, political intrigue. You're waging wars. You're building trade routes. You're converting parts of the ancient world from one religion to another to try to install your ministers to swing the balance of power. It's just an epic game in scope, but not in size. It's basically a deck of cards. It just does so much with so little, and I love how deep it is.
How do you think that Neilan and I would take to PAX Ren versus PAX Premier?
I think you'd have a similar takeaway. However you felt about one would inform the other, I think, quite a bit. I think PAX Renaissance maybe adds a layer of depth, so it would just probably be an amplification of what you thought of PAX Premier. It would be my guess.
Yeah. PAX Porfiriana is, I think, my longest Shelf of Shame.
Oh, really? Yeah. I have not played that one, but I've heard that one is among the most complex of the PAX series.
And it's pretty wild.
Yeah, right.
Like a bucking bronco in Mexico.
Thematic. That is my number 16 game of all time, PAX Renaissance.
My number 15 best game of all time has fallen a little bit. Sad. Ironically,
this is sad.
This is Rising Sun.
Rising Sun has fallen.
We see what you did there.
I see what that's not really irony, but anyway, we'll move on
from the last one.
How to do this? Thank you. Rising Sun is a game that's going to hold its place for a while because it is actually probably one of the games I've played the most. Surprisingly, I played this a bunch with a group of friends, not currently represented,
wow.
And had a great time. We were playing this every week. We were exploring different factions, exploring different strategies, as it were, trying different things, and had a good time for a while until it started to get perhaps stale, and we sort of came to some of the conclusions that I think become apparent with Rising Sun, that certain factions are not fun to play because they sort of railroad you into specific playstyles. Particularly the expansion factions are not great, in my opinion, which is perhaps unfair. I feel like my group played out Rising Sun to the point that we may not return to it, certainly not anytime soon, but I had a great time with it. I think it was my favorite game of 2018. It is a dudes in the map game with beautiful miniatures, a beautiful art style, muted colors. It's sort of a heightened version of a sort of a mythical version of Japan with monsters and demons and dragons and clans with sort of special powers. There's the Dragonfly clan that can literally fly around the map. You get these mandates, and on your turn you'll draw two and pick one to play, and you're talking with your ally about which will be the best one to play, what will benefit you, but secretly you're trying to do the one that will benefit you more than that will them, because your alliances in this game are very loose. They're very temporary. You're at all times trying to find the right point to just one-up your ally and turn the game to your advantage. I had a good time with Rising Sun. I look forward to playing maybe another couple of games of it, but I think I might be done with it. That said, I would still recommend it if you've not played it before. I would recommend you sort of try to discover its systems for yourself. It's certainly quite unique and interesting in the dudes in the map space because of the way it relies on collaborating with other players in order to get ahead. I do wish, like Mark said in an earlier episode, that the negotiation aspects were sort of more ingrained into it.
Double crossover.
There's a double crossover. The promise of this being a diplomacy-like game was extremely undercooked, I think. But that is Rising Sun. Great looking game, great minis. Had a bunch of fun with it.
You spoke with such joy about your 15th favorite board game of all time.
It's hard because it's kind of like
when I was a boy, this game was good.
Yeah. It's the thing I sort of struggled with the most, which is how do you acknowledge games that were extremely important to you, but that that are perhaps had their best days behind them?
Thanks for the memories, cool mini or not.
That is Rising Sun, my number 15.
I agree. It's hard to reward legacy in a format like this.
Yeah.
But it's weird because Rising Sun's quite new. That's why.
But
you played it a lot. I know. I'm not.
I played out and burned fast on Rising Sun.
Oh, how the mighty fall. My number 15 best game of all time, I believe, is only a double crossover with Neilan. This is Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Deception Murder in Hong Kong is a hidden trader game where the stakes are so low. Many people bounce off of bigger and more scary games like Resistance and Secret Hitler. But in Deception, the entire table is having a group discussion about what weapon it might be, or what weapon here makes us think of Rainy. And then everyone is sort of saying, well, Rainy could be, the katana, because when it rains, you hide your katana. And when
that would be a poor argument.
But the umbrella could be a better weapon for Rainy, but maybe it's the raincoat. offering up alternative theories feels easier than just straight up lying and saying, I didn't do it. There's something about the stakes of being the one in deception that I feel like is just less scary. I love deception, especially with the clever accomplice role. So there's little wrinkles there where you can add stuff to the game if you want to make it a little more interesting. What that one does is it means that another player is trying to help you. And so you're looking for an alliance of players that are talking. And this is a bit like gaslighting the game in a sense, because if two players are trying to convince you that the weapon not most likely to be rainy is the umbrella. If they're trying to tell you that, well, maybe it's the fireplace because when it's raining, people like the fire, and the two of them for a second you bow to the social pressure. You think, well, maybe they know something that I don't know, and then you go, wait a minute, like that makes no sense. They're both against me, and those moments are very fun and very great. Deception Murder in Hong Kong is a really, really good social deduction game.
My number 15 game has gone up 3 spots, and it marks the return of Mr. Cthulhu. This is Cthulhu Wars. This is not shown up on anybody's list yet, but it may. Cthulhu Wars is an asymmetric dudes on a map game, super, super asymmetric, featuring Mr. Cthulhu and friends. Crazy asymmetric. I remember when Kellen was first teaching me the game, I was blown away by how much different each faction was than the last. Not only do you have a faction power, but each of your types of troop has its own powers. I always found that fascinating. And there's also a spell book which you can unlock if you meet certain criteria. Each faction's criteria are different, and as you meet the criteria, you can unlock special powers. So the game just ramps up and ramps up and ramps up and ramps up. And towards the end of Cthulhu Wars, it's just crazy. Like, people's powers have gone out of control, and it certainly is helped by the fact that you are moving around in this Dudes on the Map game these massive figures. This is a case where the garishness of the miniatures absolutely adds to the enjoyment of the game, as does the garishness of all the dice rolling you're doing. It's a game that you're rolling sometimes tens of dice in a single combat, but it works out because having so many dice makes for a less random experience, but you still have the satisfaction, that visceral satisfaction of rolling the dice and seeing all those either successes or failures pop up. And it's just a crazy, crazy wild game, a game that I would never have approached had Kellen not turned me on to it, just because I just thought it was an Ameritrash, big plastic figures, and there wasn't going to be much to it, but there's a ton to it. It's a fantastic game. Cthulhu Wars, up 3 spots, my number 15 game of all time.
One of the systems that I want to highlight here is just, this sounds like madness incarnate, and in many ways it is just like complete zany, crazy chaos with so much going on. But what the game has with its achievement system is 6 objectives that you must complete or you are ineligible to win the game. And so one of the things I love about Cthulhu Wars is you may get thrust into a game where you don't even feel like you know all the rules for Cthulhu Wars, or it could be a game where you don't even know what all the factions can do or could do. But at any time, you can look down at your board and say, great, there are 6 things I must do. And if I can't figure out what's going on, I can try to do one of those things.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that focus
Yeah.
really helps you on just from a straight tactical level. It's like, okay, I can figure out something to do.
Yeah, for a game that can get so wild and crazy where you feel like you have all these crazy options, having it honed down to 6 objectives is great.
Yeah, and it also leads to one of my favorite things about Cthulhu Wars, which is not only is there a variance of options in terms of the factions you can play, but each faction can be built in different ways depending on the order that you choose to do those spell books. That could be different every time you play the same faction.
The only problem is, part of me wishes this spot was not occupied by Cthulhu Wars, but instead by its successor, Glorantha.
The Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game.
So I could say that. That is number 15.
Cthulhu Wars, a Sandy Peterson game.
No, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
No. That's my number 15, Cthulhu Wars.
And as I said in a previous episode, if there was no Cthulhu Wars,
right,
do you think Glorantha would be somewhere in your 40 and 50s?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd crack top 50, yeah.
Yep.
My number 14 game is another example of the older game, and again, like I was just talking about with Rising Sun, a game that I have a legacy with, but just in truth don't feel like I want to play that much anymore, unfortunately. It is still a fantastic game. It is Dominion. It is a game that I would still recommend to a lot of people. I haven't played it in a very long time, and honestly, I don't feel compelled to want to play it. It is the first and still purest and best deck builder, but there have been so many other games that have iterated on the deck builder formula that are not necessarily doing things better than Dominion does, because like I said, it's the purity of Dominion that makes it as good as it is, the wealth of options you have through all the expansions. But perhaps some of these other games are sort of introducing twists and things that turn them into more interesting games that sort of like veer towards maybe being a race game in Quest for El Dorado, or an area control game in something like Tyrants of the Underdark. I like games that are using deck building as a mechanism rather than the sole component. Perhaps that's why Dominion has slipped a little bit down my list, out of the top 10 into number 14. What a fantastic game. One of my early loves in the hobby. Dominion.
Dominion is something I credit with getting me back into the modern hobby of board games. It is so good. It is so pure. There's something kind of annoying about having to choose 10 kingdom cards for each game, and as you increase the complexity of the expansions, there are people with 10 expansions of this. I just can't imagine. Mm-hmm. But last time I got Dominion out, I thoroughly enjoyed it and had a great time revisiting it. And in many ways, when you say, it's been iterated on and there's, other deck builders, like, which one would you rather play than Dominion? There really isn't.
Like I said, I don't think any of them have necessarily improved on Dominion.
Yeah.
But they're trying to.
Absolutely. My number 14th favorite game of all time comes from a small designer. Well, I don't know if he's small or not, but John Cloudus. This is Omen, A Reign of War. This is a 2-player dueler battle game where you are using the same deck of cards for both players. So you're drawing cards from a shared pool. You are trying to get these 6 achievements. Similar to Cthulhu Wars, actually, there are 6 achievements that you're trying to get, and I believe the game ends when you've completed 5 out of 6 of the achievements. There is a way to unachieve the other player's achievements, which is kind of funny, but it is a similar system to Smash Up, a similar system, honestly, to Magic the Gathering, except there are 3 sort of places that you can play units and abilities. This game is a series of very interesting choices. Those interesting choices start at the very beginning of every single turn of the game, where you have to choose. You have 3 wealth actions, and you can get cards or money with those. But if you get money, if you choose all 3 money wealth actions, you actually get 4 coins. If you choose cards, you get 4 cards instead of the 3. But if you choose to get 1 card and 2 coins, that's all you get. Every turn starts with that decision. I just love that right off the bat. You're making interesting decisions. The card art in this game is some of the best that I've ever seen in a board game. Actually, in many ways, inspired me in part to start the Board Game Barrage Instagram account, which is halfway let us here. Omen, A Reign of War, if you're at all interested in Magic the Gathering-like experiences, if you want all that in one box, I have never tired of this game. There are now like 7 million variants and flavors and Egypt versions for Mark, but you don't need them. I have the Omen, A Reign of War Omega Edition. Just a great game. Can't say more about how much I like this. Between this and another 2-player game on my list, I almost don't feel the need to own other 2-player games.
Right. My number 14 game, again, I've said it before, this is a game that put me off for quite a long time because of the dourness of the cover and how old the game was. Played it a couple years ago for the first time and just loved it. It's just a very clear memory for me after finishing a game of Caylus, thinking like, this game could have been released yesterday. It was just so fresh to me and so tight and so well designed. Worker placement game. I think it's among the first worker placement games. There's a action selection aspect, sort of along the lines of games like Carson City and Dominant Species. There's a fixed action selection track, and you place your pawn on it. Every time you place your pawn down to take an action, you have to pay in advance a coin. The economy is incredibly tight in this game, so pledging this coin to take an action is a big investment. And then you have all your pawns set up, you're ready to take these actions, and all of them are very, very crucial to you. But then there's the provost, because one of the things that you or your opponents can control is where the provost ends up at the end of the round. And wherever the provost ends, that's where the list of turn actions ends. So, for example, if I need to activate a building that's down the road, that is one of the last buildings to activate, I need to make sure that the provost doesn't pass in front of that building, because if my building comes after the provost's pawn, it just doesn't activate. I've already paid for it. I may have already planned on it happening, but if it doesn't fire off, it doesn't fire off. So there's cajoling with your opponents, because everybody gets a chance to pay. Every round, everybody gets a chance to pay some coins to move the provost around. So you can try to talk to your opponents and say, hey, don't pay for them this time, and I won't pay for them when you need it. You can bribe your opponents. You can do whatever you need, but just that provost part of it is such a mean part of Caylus that I just thought it was really amazing, really refreshing. It's a fantastic worker placement game. Do not let the box throw you off. I think there's a new version of it coming out. I don't know what changes it makes, but part of me hopes that no changes are made because it's such a great game. Caylus, down a spot because I haven't had a chance to play it recently, but I just absolutely love it. My number 14 game of all time.
I really enjoyed my one play of Caylus and hope to play it more.
Yeah.
I know the new edition may, and there's also a card game version that could be interesting.
Caylus Magna Carta. Yeah, I need to get Neilan.
Yeah, I this is another one that our friend Dean has just had for the entirety of the time I've known him, and I've just never played it. Yeah.
I think it may be triggering to many modern board gamers because the provost literally allows you to just be like, oh, those special things you wanted to do, now you don't get to do them.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Yeah.
My number 13 best game of all time has moved up a couple of spots. This is almost, but not quite, my favorite Dudes on the Map game. This is Inish. At this point last year, Inish was a game that I liked a lot, but our games always ran long and didn't seem to quite live up to the promise. I loved everything about Inish, just wish it was a little bit faster. I've now played a few more games of it in 2019 that hewed closer to the ideal of just being a game that goes quicker. It also had the expansion seasons of Inish, which not only bumps the player count to 5, but adds another mechanic that will speed up the game. Inish is a game that is beautifully simple in its rule set in that everything is dictated by a card which you draft at the start of every round. The cards determine what you're going to be able to do on that round, whether it's placing figures, moving figures, initiating attacks, or some other special abilities. You're trying to do one of 3 different win conditions, but you both have to sort of satisfy the win condition, make a claim, say, I am going to try to win on this round, and then everyone comes at you to try to stop you. You collect deeds which help you get closer to these win conditions. It is a beautiful game that has a lot of variance in the special powers that are dictated by the land masses that come out each game. I love Inish. The fighting system could not be simpler. It is simply, I kill do you want to stop fighting or kill a guy? Otherwise, we keep going. We're just going to keep killing guys. That's it. You keep going until you all agree to stop. It's
Do we
so
agree
good.
to stop the killing?
Yeah, or no.
Oh.
And yeah, it is a game that leads, because of that, the battles become more about negotiations than, a more routine battle system, which is in itself just fascinating to me. Inish is great. I would love to play a lot more of it now that we have the Seasons of Inish expansion. That is my number 13 best game of all time.
Inish was such a disappointment for me early on. It was a game that felt like it was lesser than the sum of its parts. All the parts were exciting to me, but whenever I played it, primarily because of the length and because of the bash leader problems, I just always had issues with it. I was very heartened by the expansion that we just played because I think it solves some of those problems. So it's not on my list this year, but I think it could maybe move up there in the years to come.
Love Inish. My number 13th favorite game of all time. This game has moved up from the 21st spot to the 13th spot based on some recent plays of it. This is from... It's hard when we've already got the only true and living Doctor. Like, what can you say that's better than that? By no
greater superlative.
By no other name than Karl Chadiak himself, the master of multi-use cards. This is Glory to Rome. Glory to Rome, Black Box Edition, is one of the prizes of my collection. The apple in my eye. The
black box in your collection.
Moon in the sky. That's not the phrase. Glory to Rome is a double crossover with Mr. Mark Posada.
That's right. That's my name.
Would have been a triple crossover if Neilan would get off his butt and play the game more with us.
Got him.
I didn't curse there, guys.
You did not.
I'm so happy for you all.
Well, you cursed on some level. I feel like some people would think of that as a curse.
Fair.
I could hear the subtext.
Fair. In Glory to Rome, you are using cards.
Oh, wait, hold on. I should have made a joke about Neilan would get off his butt, but he's playing with the one cheek rule. Think about that.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Next level, yeah.
Go ahead.
Good joke.
That's all I need.
Glory to Rome is similar in many ways to my favorite board game that has not yet been revealed, except it leans more strategic. In Glory to Rome, you are using cards to think and follow. There are many similarities to games like Race for the Galaxy, except it's a little wilder, it's a little wackier, it's a little crazier. It does something really smart. Each card, once completed, has a game-breaking-ish power that allows you to bend and break the rules. But once a card is injected into the system in a certain way, it can never be used again for its special power, so you're not constantly checking and flipping over cards. Other games that use multi-use cards have some annoying elements where you're constantly looking at like the back of the card and trying to figure out how this, if it's in this pile, then maybe you can pull it out and use it for another action. Glory to Rome is smart in how it forces you to use the cards, and once they become a piece of rubble, it's always a piece of rubble and can never be the building that it depicts. But if you want to play a game where you are building up a civilization, where you are watching like a hawk what other players are doing, where you feel like you're engaging with players on every turn, Glory to Rome is a fantastic game to get. The game always ends right as it feels completely broken. Some player is able to draw and build things in half a turn when it took them 5 turns at the beginning of the game, and you will start saying, wow, that feels unfair. Wow, that feels unfair. And then people are going to be looking at your tableau and going, wow, that feels unfair. That is awesome. That is Glory to Rome by Carl Chudyk. What a fantastic game.
Yep. Great game. My number 13 game has dropped 3 spots. It's probably my most contentious pick from last year. The one I got, I think, the most flack for. Cue the Cyndi Lauper. This is... Go ahead.
True colors. That's why I love you.
Excellent. Perfect. Now we can hit stop on the play button, or hit stop on the whatever.
But we might get got by the bots because that was so close to
That's
her
true.
original rendition.
Those darn bots. True Colors is a lot like a game I mentioned earlier, Scruples. What you're doing in True Colors is some question is posed about you and your group of friends. Everybody's assigned a color, and you vote for the friends that you think the question most applies to. So if the question is, who of your friends would you go to if you had a tech problem? And say Neilan was purple. And
You'd pick Neilan, right?
And Kellen was red.
You'd pick purple.
Some people might put one purple and one red for both of them, but some other people, if you think it's definitely one person, you could put 2 purple. If you think Neilan is definitely the answer, and if you think Kellen is definitely the answer, you can put 2 red. So these votes are put into a black box, and then the fun of it is revealing who got the most votes. So Kellen might think that our group of friends considers him the tech guy. Neilan might think otherwise, and the votes are counted, and then the truth comes out, and then arguments, usually fun arguments, are had.
The truth came out.
We played a rollicking game of this at last year's Barrage Con, which was super, super fun. Played it until the wee hours of the night. That's the way you're supposed to play it. Play this game with friends that you are comfortable with. Do not play this game with people that you're not comfortable with, because it'll be terrible.
What do you think would happen if I tried to play with my family over Christmas?
I think that would be
pretty funny.
Crazy.
Pretty funny. Live stream that.
There you go. That's a
I
revenue
might
stream.
want to borrow this from you.
Yeah, you got it. For sure. For sure.
I don't know what would happen.
Well, you could curate the cards. Make sure there are no mean cards. Or make sure there's only mean cards.
Make sure it's only. What do you mean? Make sure that's all that's happening.
All right.
Get to the truth.
Yes.
Get to the truth.
Exactly. This is one of my favorite friendship building games, because after a couple games of True Colors, because things can get so illuminating. You may think you're this part of the friend group, or you may think nobody would ever think you do X, Y, and Z, and everybody thinks that you do X, Y, and Z twice. It's great. As long as you're with people that you care about, it can be one of your best gaming experiences of all time, and is my 13th favorite game of all time, True Colors.
My number 12 best game of all time has already been mentioned by Mark.
Boom.
Double crossover. It is Sidereal, Confluence, Trading and Negotiation in the Elysian
In which
Quadrant.
The Elysian Quadrant.
Don't get any of the other Quadrant versions of Sidereal.
You got at least 3 other quadrants.
Yeah.
It's none of those.
It's the Elysian Quadrant. That's the one you want. Sidereal Confluence is a fantastic game of trading and negotiation, just like it says in the title. It is a game that plays almost entirely simultaneously, so you have a trading round where everyone is trying to get the resources they need from other people. You might have resources that you produced last round that you don't need, so you give them away to get the ones you do need. You put those into your little cube converters, you get better cubes, ones that you do need, in order to fund research projects that you're trying to build towards to get points and new technologies. It is a game where the economy feels quite friendly, because you mostly want to do trades that are fair. It doesn't let you get away with lying or sort of backstabbing people. In fact, that's built into the game. If you make a promise to someone, you must follow through on it, which takes out some of the nastier elements that I don't like from some other negotiation games. But at the same time, it is not a game that is all just friendly all the time. Like, there's an element of trying to one up people a little bit with your deals in order to get something that's mostly going to be beneficial towards you. But overall, the economy is just boosted by people sort of helping each other out, because that means that if you can help, say, Dan produce more green cubes, and you actually need green cubes, and that's good for you too. So that's great. There are vastly different asymmetric powers. Every alien in the game plays completely differently, has different sort of micro goals that they're working towards, little benefits they can hand out. It's a really incredible game. And one of the things I think is the smartest about it is that it theoretically plays in the same length of time whether you're playing with 4 people or you're playing with 9 people, because like I said, almost everything in the game happens simultaneously. Sidereal Confluence is a game that I've played a couple of times this year recently, and it still just goes up and up in my estimation every single time I play it. That is Sidereal Confluence, trading and negotiation in the Elysian Quadrant.
My number 12 favorite board game of all time is now, I believe, a double crossover with one of the two of you. That is Codenames.
Yes, crossover with me.
Codenames is so good, really needs no introduction in the modern board gaming world. The easiest thing to say, a modern board gaming classic. It is a word party game. If you have not played it before, you owe it to yourself to check it out. It can be had for many times under $15 on Amazon. Such a sweet spot. But even if this game was triple the price, I would own Codenames, no questions asked. Word association game, a game of thinking, a game of feistiness, a game of arguing and laughing and trying to get risky sometimes when you have to, making associations between words that don't exist and hoping like hell that your friends understand what you are doing and what you are thinking. I don't know that I've ever had a bad game of this. It's very flexible, from a straight 4-player game all the way up to bigger groups when you have to. It's obviously not great, but you could play it at 10 with 2 teams of 5 and still have a fun time sort of bickering amongst yourselves. It would be a different experience. But Codenames, Codenames, Codenames. You cannot go wrong playing Codenames.
My number 12 game, the Doctor has made, I think, 4 or 5 appearances on my list. This is his final one. This is my favorite game of his.
Touched by a doctor.
I was touched by a doctor, and and when I looked down, I saw that he had left me with both Tigris and Euphrates. Tigris and Euphrates is my favorite game from Knizia. It is, I think, considered his masterpiece. It is a very, very rough...
Is that like Yellow and Yangtze?
Yes, it is. It is like Yellow, but it's a different set of rivers, and it's his original rivers game, although the rivers play a very small role in it, but they do play a role. I am getting sidetracked. Tigris and Euphrates is a sort of civilization building game, very abstracted. You are laying tiles, trying to score points. The biggest Knizia twist in this game is that you are trying to score points in 4 different categories, but your final score is the category in which you score the least points. So whatever your lowest score of those 4 scores is, that's your score. So you may have 100 blue points and 1 green point, and guess what? Your score is 1. So it forces you to diversify, which is something you don't find in a lot of modern board games. Modern board games, the name of the game is efficiency, finding your niche, and exploiting. You can't do that in Tigris and Euphrates. You're forced to diversify. There are a couple of ways to get a lot of points all at once, but they come with great risk, because to do that, you have to start what are called either internal or external conflicts, rebellions, and wars, I think, are other ways they're referred to. But when those happen, you are battling other players at the table, and you're going up with the strength that you have displayed on the board versus theirs, plus a blind bid system that can get quite punishing and quite tense when those battles come up. So it's a game that requires a lot of planning, requires also tactical thinking, but also has big moments. When these wars come up, although they can't necessarily make or break a game, you know that the winning side of a war can very much turn the way that a game is headed, much like the way that the Tigris River has turned over the eons into the mighty whatever. Tigris and Euphrates is a fantastic game. I recommend it to anybody who is into mean abstracts. This is, I would say, among the best, if not the best. My number 12 game, up 2 spots, Tigris and Euphrates.
I want to like Tigris and Euphrates. It's a game that every time I have played, it's a class of game which I admire, which is that it greatly rewards expertise and familiarity, in that if you're playing with someone that knows the game, even remotely, you're going to get slaughtered.
Right.
Which, in a game that is already quite punishing, is a hard pill to swallow.
That's true. That's very true.
I think this is a game I could have grown to love if I was playing it with people of equal skill level repeatedly. It seems like that sort of game that you want to refine your expertise at. It just has never quite sat well with me in all the times I've played it.
And I agree with you on that. I would say, now, I think there are people who are fantastic at it and they're in a different class, but it feels to me that while a novice would get stomped by somebody who's played the game, once you've played the game a couple times, my sense, I could be wrong again, is that you're on equal footing. Like,
okay.
It's not a game that rewards gradients and experience that much. Like, if you're slightly more experienced than somebody else, I think you're pretty much on equal footing. But, that's my just gut feeling about it.
Yeah, I might be on the verge of the breakthrough with Tigris and Euphrates, because I've only played it a handful of times.
Okay.
And I feel like I can see myself maybe cresting that curve.
Right. And you may be playing it with some people who are just really good at it, or my supposition may be incorrect. But gotcha.
Cool. My number 11 game is a game featuring Mr. Cthulhu and friends. It is my favorite Dudes in the Map game. This is a double crossover with Mr. Mark.
That's right.
And friends.
This is Cthulhu Wars. Mark's already spoken about it this episode. It's a game that you could look at the board and all these big, brightly colored, ridiculously sized miniatures and just laugh off as something that's overblown or ridiculous, but you'd be missing out on a game that is quite well refined, quite well tuned. It shouldn't work as well as it does, given how wildly different all the factions are, how many different varying options there are for each faction, but somehow it does. It's a game where every combat feels meaningful because you throw your figures in, you throw a ton of dice, and people die, and it's hard to get them back. It rewards repeat plays like very few Dudes in the Map games do. Like I said before, I want to dig into each faction and explore all their options, as well as try every faction, of which there are about 8 or 9 that you could get. It is quite an expensive game, but it is, I think, quite worth it if you're willing to sort of take the time to learn it and play it frequently. I wish we played Cthulhu Wars a lot more than we do. That is my number 11 game, Cthulhu Wars.
It's one that revels in its own ridiculousness. It knows that handing you 20 custom dice and letting you roll 17 of them is going to make you happy. And I don't historically like games with that much dice, but then it pairs it with very smart Euro design decisions that keep things moving. And right as it feels like it's unraveling, the game will end. And it doesn't go too far off its own rails, even if right near the end you're kind of like, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. My number 11 favorite board game of all time has fallen a few slots from last year, falling out of my top 10. This comes after a 7 to 12 hour session of the game that we played together, where Mark got. This is Diplomacy. Diplomacy is well known among board gamers as the game that ends friendships. This is a game set in Europe where 7 players and 7 players only will play a game of negotiation and cunning. That game is very simple, very straightforward, where you will leave the room, you will make private deals, you will come back to the table, and everyone will reveal a piece of paper that has their orders written down. Their written down orders will all be executed on the board. Weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth will happen as you say one thing and do another on the board. Alliances quickly form, alliances of opportunity, long game alliances where you've made sort of soft deals with almost every other player around the table for different things. It's a game that you look someone in the eye, you say, I will not attack you there, and then you reveal the card and you have attacked them there, and real pain exists. It's hard to fault the game for being so long, even though it is its greatest flaw, because it gives the thing stakes. 6 hours in, when you desperately need something to go your way and it doesn't, that devastation is borne out because you invested 6 hours to get there. Diplomacy is a game that you can also play asynchronously via a web forum, and something that I'm looking to organize in the Discord, I think, for early 2020. So if you're interested in that, please reach out on the Board Game Barrage Discord. I do want to try this at least one more time with you guys. We had a good game, I would say, at least to see what it feels like. But this is a game that people study to figure out what it means to be a sociopath and a liar, and really how to manipulate people and what kind of aura you should put on when you start playing the game, because it really is more about getting along with the 7 people that you're playing with and less about any master strategic brilliance that you could come up with.
My number 11 game of all time has dropped 5 spots. This is a crossover with Neilan, so I'm returning the favor for Cthulhu Wars. This is Archipelago. He spoke about it last episode. This is, I think, semi-co-op done just about as well as you can do it. The intrigue and the tension and the paranoia that this game fosters is fantastic. Everybody has a end-of-game scoring that will score for everybody, but only they know it, so you're wondering why is Kellen building this church? Why is he going after that? And it's just the index sheet with all the potential end of game scoring possibilities is being passed around constantly throughout the game. And this is a palpable sense of paranoia. You're just wondering, and is there a traitor among you that is just looking to tank the game? Just again, semi-co-op, so hard to do. I think it's done just about as well as you could possibly hoped in Archipelago, my number 11 game, down 5 spots from last year.
That is going to do it for this episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. We are going to be back next week with our top 10 games of all time. It's happening next week.
What could it be? What could Kellen's number 1 be? What could my number 1 be, for that matter?
My number 1 be, yeah, it's a mystery all around.
I guess we may never know.
If we survive one more week.
Have I told you that Kanye West quote that's like one of my favorites?
Chick-fil-A, I love
no,
Chick-fil-A.
love that one too. No, it's like when he won some Grammy in like 2008, he got up on stage and said some stupid crap, and then near the end he was like, he held up the Grammy and he said, people were talking about what kind of crazy thing I would do if I didn't win this award. And then he looks out, he's like, I guess we'll never know. And then he walked off the stage. It's like such a good line.
Right.
I could feel it in my plums.
What a great way to end the episode.
Yep. If you want to discuss stuff that we've been saying on this episode, if you disagree or agree with our picks for number 20 to 11, please let us know. You can reach out to us on our Discord. That is boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. It's a chat room where you can come hang out with us and talk to other people about board games. You can also go to our guild on Board Game Geek. You can get there by going to boardgamebarrage.com/guild. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. Thank you as always to Heart Society for letting us use What's on Your Mind, Kid as our intro and outro song. Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.
My number 15 best game of all time.
We are gonna make it. We are gonna make it. We are gonna make it. Cheer up, Charlie. Cheer up, Charlie. Did you skip that part on the movie? I would always fast forward it.
I don't know what you're talking
What
about.
movie?
And Willy Wonka.
Cheer up, Charlie. Was that a song?
Yeah, it's the song the mom sings to the kid while he's like running through the
You're
streets while
talking
he
about
pours.
the old version, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember.
It's like 10 minutes long of this mom singing.
Okay, have you seen the old Charlie?
I actually haven't. I've never
with
seen
Gene
it.
Wilder?
I've only-
Okay.
What?
No, I've read the book, but I've never seen the movie.
You haven't seen the new movie, right?
No.
Okay, thank God. So you've seen the old movie.
What?
Okay, is there? I have a recollection, very strong recollection of watching this movie as a kid, and you know when they go in the tunnel,
Yeah.
is there a part where a chicken gets its head cut off?
I mean,
Like-
there's some weird like scorpions and creepy things that are happening.
Okay, I could
That's that-
swear I had this very vivid thing of watching it in class, and like she's going in like this like water like
There's
tunnel.
no knowing where we're going or which direction
Yeah, and
the
it's really
river's
creepy.
flowing.
There's,
and
like,
it's
all these,
getting
like-
ramping up, and it's like creepy burner, burner,
there's, like, crazy things that are
burner.
flashing on the wall, and I have this image in my head
Chicken
of
getting its head
a
cut
chicken being
off?
put on a block and then its head getting cut off.
That's dark.
Yeah, very dark. I don't know, I could have dreamt it, but I do have those kind of dreams.
This can be solved very quickly.
It'd be the weirdest outtake.
Who hates ads here? Raise your hand. We all raised our hand. Shut up. Here we go.
Oh, but I'm not kidding. I wonder. If it's not there, I wonder if they cut it out.
It's possible.
I knew it.
Why is that in there?
This is awesome.
Oh my god, they do not make movies like that anymore.
That is unnerving.
That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
Why they let kids watch this stuff?
I watched that in grade school. I remember it clearly. It's one of my most vivid memories.
It stuck with you.
It stuck with me.
So now you always know to not get on a boat with a strange chocolate man.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
Back to the regularly scheduled programming.
A good interlude. Is it Neilan?
Yeah.
15?